We are back. Welcome to another boot camp session, this time with Dr. Paul Bedford talking about retention. My name is Todd Tweedy. I will be your moderator for the session today, as well as your moderator for the Motionsoft Technology Summit. Our webinar series is sponsored by our friends from Club Industry. And if you haven't had a chance, they actually just relaunched their website. Nice little responsive web design and some great SEO work. You can check them out at clubindustry.com. And don't forget October 4th through the 6th in Chicago, the Club Industry Show. And speaking of events, our Motionsoft Technology Summit and this webinar series is a kind of a precursor to the event itself. We're going to be held in Washington, D.C. at the spectacular Sphinx Club. You can see a little picture up there in the lower left-hand corner. We've just announced our Technology Summit Advisory Board, 24-Hour Fitness, Wellbridge, Gold's Gym, and Blink Fitness. Garrett Barunda, Larry Carrington, Adam Zaitsev, and Adam Podber. Get a chance, check it out. In fact, if you register before the 21st, you'll save $200 on the Summit Pass, which is only $449 right now. You can check us out at the MotionsoftTechnologySummit.com. Now, just kind of some quick house cleaning here, and just to make sure everybody has a good feel for what's coming up. We have our next boot camp next Wednesday at 2 o'clock with Clark Langman with MedPro Wellness, probably one of the leading experts in the space on helping clubs to set up a medical wellness service offering within an existing club framework. Definitely get a chance. Really innovative speaker and just a heck of a lot of fun. That's next Wednesday at 2 o'clock. Now, just to help you engage with Paul and ask questions that you would like to pose, you can use the control panel interface and hit the question section to pose questions to Paul during the session or at the conclusion of his comments. If you want to go ahead and just give it a shot, just go ahead and type Dr. Bedford. Excellent. I think everybody's got a good handle on that. Excellent. Hey, thanks, Shauna. Thanks, Katie. Appreciate it. Now let me quickly introduce your presenter and hand things over to Dr. Bedford, who is really just, he's one of us. I mean, he's been in this industry for many, many years, both as a group fitness instructor, a personal trainer, a GM for both private and public clubs. But really, you know, Dr. Bedford's known for being a data scientist who authored 1 Million Strong, an in-depth study of member retention in North America. He's got a really interesting approach to retention, and being a data scientist, I think he's really more focused on customer experience, to be honest, than retention. But the retention steps and techniques that he outlines really encompass, you know, a broad spectrum of club engagement and member communications. So with that, let me turn things over to Dr. Paul Bedford. Welcome to the Motionsoft Technology Summit Boot Camp Education Series, Paul.
Thanks, Todd. Good afternoon, everyone. Looking forward to this session this afternoon. It's been a while since I've done one of these for you, so I've got some new stuff. We will cover a couple of things that we've covered before, but that's just to reinforce learning from last time as well. So let's get cracking. So yeah, I wanted to talk this afternoon about what I'm observing when I'm looking at retail. So my entire work focus is on how do you keep members in clubs for longer. And so I'm not particularly worried about, you know, wearable tech in terms of people out running or using Strava and things like that. My entire focus is on, if they want to use our clubs, how do we keep them in our clubs? How do we get them to stay in our clubs for longer in terms of weeks, months, and years rather than just in terms of minutes? And because I have that focus, I spend most of my time watching what's going on in retail environments and saying, how could you turn that into a retention strategy? How could you flip that? So rather than it being sales and marketing, you can actually use it as an approach to help your business retain your members for longer. So what I've got this afternoon is a number of topics. Some of them are going to be really simple. Some of them are going to be cutting edge technology, just to show you where some of the things are going. So let's get started. Now, obviously I'm going to talk about data-driven strategies, and I think the thing to consider is that all the retailers that are doing really well with the use of technology in their retail environments, and I'm talking about in their physical environments, their bricks and mortar buildings, are actually based on a data-driven strategy. They're collecting data about their customers, about their users, both in store and on the web, and they're using it to help them actually design their stores, fit out their stores, and then interact with their customers to make sure they get this frictionless experience. I'm going to try and share, top 3 retention interventions as we go along. I'm going to talk about reframing and retargeting. I want to talk about what I call hotspots and blind spots, technology innovations, and also that I've made a list of resources so that people can follow up on these afterwards if you're interested. So data-driven strategies. If you look at the people who are achieving real success in their bricks and mortar stores with technology, what they're mainly doing is they're anticipating, or they're looking to see if they can understand the needs and desires of their customers, and then discover the points of engagement that cause friction within their business and reduce those frictions. And one of our ways of doing that is to think, how do we reduce friction in our club? Whether that's ease of access, overcrowding, maybe a service failure. There's a whole range of things we can be focusing on that will just make the members' life that much easier. And again, as you mentioned in the introduction, it's about then adjusting your club's member experience to increase the engagement and reduce those reduce that friction. My slide doesn't want to change now. Here we go. So my takeaway is going to be, connect what members want and with what your club can deliver. So you want to connect the two. So they've got desires, needs and desires. You've got facilities, services and support. And if you can link the two of them together using this data-driven understanding of your member, then you're going to have masses and masses of success. Now, in the work that I've done, a lot of the behavioural psychology work that I do when we're doing the big data stuff, we've identified that the 3 top interventions for improving member retention are visits, interaction, programming. In fact, if you've heard me speak at any of the events or on seminars before, I pretty much argue that if they don't visit, you can't interact, and it doesn't matter what programming you write, they're not going to do it. So visits is the #1 activity. We need to get them visiting the club and keep those visits consistent. When they are visiting, we then, excuse me, we need to ensure there are interactions. And we've seen that human interactions with humans have a much bigger impact than any form of digital interaction is currently having. And then we'll look at the programming. Is the programming for the individual, for the member, appropriate with what they're trying to achieve? Now, if we want to take a benchmark, or we want to look at someone who's really nailed this, Burberry, their high-end fashion retailer, have really taken data-driven analytics in the consumer shopping environment to a completely another level. There's a whole range of videos you can watch on this on YouTube, but during the global economic downturn, Burberry grew their business. They significantly grew their business, and they did it by actually starting to say, if we understand our customers better, we can service our customers better. And when they come into the store, we can provide them with the range of clothing they want and in the sizes. So we can start to predict what these customers are going to do. And if you look at something like some of their flagship stores, they're using facial recognition, they're using RFID, they're collecting data about their customers at point of sale. And in fact, they followed the same sales strategy in some parts of the store that Apple have, where you don't go to a checkout anymore. You pay at point of purchase. You pick up a product, they lift up a handheld device, they take a swipe of your card and put your product in a bag, and away and out you walk. And if you start searching the internet for the types of things retailers are doing, you'll even come across digital mirrors where people can actually order clothing to the changing room in their size, and it's almost, they have an online catalogue in front of them in the mirror. And there's even advances where someone will augment that reality, so you can stand there, pick an item of clothing, and they'll augment that clothing over what you're wearing while you're standing there to give you some idea of how that might look. So one of the things I'm going to suggest to everybody that they do is listening this afternoon is that they go and look up what Burberry are doing. Not right now, you can do it afterwards, but look up what Burberry are doing, and then start flipping these ideas on how could we do this. I haven't myself worked out yet how we could use a mirror. I'm sure things like virtual fitness planner, body tracks, those types of body scanning systems could use the mirror to say, well, this is, if you carry on training, this is what you might look like. Yeah, just a thought, really. I want to start with something really simple, and I've used this slide because one of the things I'm interested in as a hobby is videoing and filmmaking. And so something that's we've all experienced is visiting a website, and this is a website I visit here in the UK, CVP. They sell all professional video equipment. And when I go on their website, what happens, 2 days later, I'm on my internet browser and up pops an ad, a banner ad for CVP, particularly the items I've been looking at. So you can tell straight away that more recently I've been looking at video switches for multi-camera work when we're filming events, and it'll either appear as a banner ad across the top, or it may appear as an ad just offset to one side. This is really simple technology. This is just taking retargeting pixels and here using them to try and convince me to come back and to purchase products. But one of the things we've been trying with our clients is actually taking the retargeting pixels and using them once someone's purchased, get them back onto the website, onto particular pages, and retargeting them with messages about using the club and getting more from their training. So we're using retargeting as a retention tool. Now, the challenge that I've had here is that many of the people I'm working with on this are marketers. And if you give them 2 or 3 items, you say, right, I want to do 3 different pieces that are all about retaining members and bringing members back into the club. By the time you got to the 3rd one, their thinking has already moved back into trying to sell something. So it's constantly, oh, well, why can't we sell personal training? Can't we sell more protein shakes? Can't we do a 2-for-1 membership offer? And so I've struggled a little bit with some of the teams I've worked with to get them thinking in a different perspective, because the language you use when you're talking to people once they've joined shouldn't be the same language you're using when you're trying to get people to join. They've already made the decision to join, so now what we want to do is we want to be reassuring they've made the right decision. We want to be prompting them to do other activities. And retargeting can be really good for what's described as micro actions. So I might have something that pops up here on the screen, this is the CVP one, but I might have something that's like, join us on Facebook, where I'm actually going to prompt them to take a small action to do something that I would like them to do. So join us on Facebook, join our club community. Now that will then give me additional information about them once they join us on Facebook, because I can harvest that data from my Facebook analytics. But all I'm trying to do each and every time is give them one little thing to do. I'm not asking them to make big commitments. I'm not asking them to spend more money. But these types of ads might be something about, try and make sure you get into the club at least 6 times in the first month of membership. We look forward to seeing you. And then you pop something else up that's another message about reinforcing they've made the right decision to join your club, what they can expect to get, and then a micro action for them to follow. What you want to do with the micro actions is get them making these tiny little behavior changes, so you get them into the habit of making changes when they see, or making decisions or taking behaviors when they see your, what technically are ads, but we're using them as a method just for retargeting from a retention perspective. So that would be really, really simple. But so you have to reframe the way in which you think of retargeting. You have to think about the way in which you speak to people. Avoid just trying to go back into the sales process. And think of it as, what would I say to someone to reassure them they've made the right decision? Perhaps provide social proof where there's images of lots of other people doing the same thing that they've done. Maybe it'd be a montage of images of all the people who've joined this month, which would reassure me that I've made the right decision. Those types of things can be really powerful, but really simple. And in most cases, most of you as operators will have some form of retargeting going on already within your business. You just have to adapt some of it to certain pages of your membership websites or the sites they visit, that don't end up being another sales promotion. I think the next thing to start thinking about is the member behavior. Now, I've done quite a lot of studies on member behavior. We do a lot of observational work. And I think what's really interesting from my perspective is that if this was someone, if they were observing this woman shopping, they watch what her behavior is. They don't watch what the shampoo bottle's doing. They might be able to log how many shampoo bottles have been sold, but if you want to understand the customer, you need to watch the customer and what the customer's doing. Because this woman may pick up the bottle, read the label, put the bottle back, pick up another bottle, read the label, put the bottle back. She might do that several times before making her decision. Now, the bottle doesn't tell us anything about her behavior. So if we track the behavior of the bottle, that's of no use. So we need to be tracking the behavior of the members. Now, retail outlets have been doing this with heat maps and video tracking for a number of years now. And it's actually got very, very sophisticated in some of the higher end retail stores. So, they're going to be working out where someone's walking, what speed they're walking at, where's their dwell time, do they stop anywhere? There's obviously lots of studies been done where they get people to wear optical aids type glasses where they can actually track where people are looking to see if they're looking at certain products or certain promotions. Now we can take that and we can do this in either a really advanced way like this, or we can do it in a more simplistic way. But here's a thought. This is a client of mine. They're based in Lithuania. I really love these guys. They've got two brands of fitness. They've got Impulse, which is their more premium brand, and Lemon, which is their low cost. And I've made this comment to them, so it's not like I haven't said it. But my comment is this. If you have to put a map of your gym on the wall to show people where to go, I think you haven't really thought about your gym layout. Or if you have, you've planned it based around how you'd like the gym to be rather than how the member or the gym user will experience it. So this is quite an old slide now, but this is from Borges in the Netherlands, which was a club. And what we did here, and this doesn't show the whole club, it just shows a section, was we arranged the equipment in a really simplistic way. So down here you have a chest press, then a seated pull, then a leg press, then I think that one's the lat, that's the shoulder press, and then the next one's a leg extension and so on. So there's a few machines in a row here. We also, on the other side of this curve, we arranged a range of cardiovascular equipment. There's 4 different pieces of cardiovascular equipment along here. And all we said to people who are new to exercise was start here and just keep moving until you finish at the other end. So rather than having to try and navigate around the club, trying to find different pieces of equipment for different muscle groups, we arranged it in a workout format. So we just said, start here, work along the line, finish at this end. Now, not all the equipment in the club was arranged like this, but what we found was when we did start to arrange it like this, people actually followed that behavior. They didn't need program cards. They didn't need maps of the gym. They just knew that start here, finish here. We told them to pick 2 from 4 in terms of the cardio equipment, so they could do some cardio work and some resistance work. And as they wanted to develop their program, there are a few more resistance machines on the opposite curve and another variety of CV, so they could build this up over time. So what we were trying to do was actually make or look at how people are using the club, and we rearrange things quite frequently to watch the behavior in order to fully understand, could we manipulate the behavior of the members, and would they find that easier in terms of their workouts? Now I've got to tell you, further over here there was a lot more resistance equipment arranged in a more traditional bodybuilding format, where you might have a leg press, leg extension, leg curl together, a seated row, lat pull down, and another type of back exercise. So, but we didn't keep that throughout the club. We made some areas of the club very, very simple to use, and we took that from the idea of this: when people are shopping, how do you make it easy for them to shop? How do you keep the flow of things going? And if you know where you want to get them, and in most shops they want you in the far corner, so you've passed most of the products, how could we do that? So how do we manipulate people's behaviors? Now we took that to a much grander scale. This is David Lloyd in Hatfield. It was originally Next Generation Clubs, but they're all now owned by the same people. And we looked at the layout of the entire facility, and this was the entrance, and I'm going to confuse you with that in a second because I'm going to flip the diagram. But again, we use these curves in terms of the design for resistance, and we matched a couple of things. This was all kitted out with live fitness equipment. So over here we had a live fitness signature machine, seated row. On the opposite side we had a live fitness seated MTS machine. So actually both those machines did the same thing. One was just a more advanced version than the other, and by mirroring the equipment for the first 6 exercises, you could actually learn how to use the machine on the opposite side of you just by watching someone. So we were trying to help people with what we call vicarious learning. We've taken this idea of designing the floor layout, and rather than having things in just completely straight lines or in what I would call pods, groups of small groups of equipment, we thought about how do we educate, how do we teach, and how do we get people to learn and self-teach between machines. Now some of these areas have changed over time, so this area, which was a relaxation area, that's gone, and more relaxation's done here in the center and across here. But we actually looked at the design, and then we took it a step further, because what we did was we took all of the zones, and these are all the different zones that were in the club, and what we did was we said, okay, what's the most common member path through the gym? Now we did this about 12 years ago, and it required at least one person to sit on an extremely high set of steps in the corner of the gym, where they could actually just sit and watch people as they walk through. Sometimes we actually asked permission and we followed people as well, but we watched their behavior. And what we saw was that the most common pattern for people coming in was they'd come in, oh, wrong way, sorry. They'd come in, they'd go and do some cardio work, then they'd go and do some strength work, then they'd go and do their core towards the end of their workout, and then they would leave. So that was the most common pathway through. For just 3 major areas of the club they were using, and then they were gone. So we had invested all of this time and money in developing all these other zones, and the most common path was they only used 3 areas. So we then looked at the second most common path. In fact, we looked at lots of pathways. Some of them came in and used cardio with the built-in TV screens. Then they went and did some resistance, then they did some core, then they left. So they're still doing basically the same workout, but they're using the facility in a slightly different way. Third most common, they came in, they did some cardio, they did some MTS, so perhaps some more advanced strength. They went backwards and forwards between the advanced strength machines and the basic strength machines. Then they went over and did some free weights. Then they did some cables. Then they did their core. Then they left. And we carried on tracking until we found out which were the 10 most commonly used pathways throughout the facility. Once we mapped that, we then decided to use pop-up stands to prompt certain behaviours. Because what we were looking to do is we were looking to get people to train in particular ways. So we had an agenda, they had an agenda. But we would put pop-up signs, say over here where the rumble zone is, which was all punch bags, with a picture of a boxer, with an idea of 30 seconds work, 30 seconds rest, you know, go 9 rounds, and we gave them advice about what they could do. And the hammer zone and the ground base, these are quite advanced resistance equipment. They're not the sort of thing that the new exercise would use. Again, we use pop-up stands to give people an idea of workout types. Now, this was like more than 10 years ago, and we'd certainly do it slightly differently now. But what we want to do is we want to measure what, we're not interested in measuring what the equipment's doing, because it won't give us completely tell us what the members are doing. So you could have perhaps one of the new Cybex Spark machines. It's all brand new, you love it. What happens, a member walks in, they look at it, they can't work out how to use it. They might walk around it a couple of times, then they'll walk away. Now, does that mean they won't ever use it? No, because if they see someone else use it, they can learn through vicarious experience. If you've got a member of staff on, they could show them how to use it. But if you just tracked how often the Spark machine was used, it wouldn't tell you what's going on with the member behavior. So you want to be mixing, tracking what your equipment's doing with tracking what your members are doing as well. Now, when you start looking at spaces in the same way retail do, then what you start to notice is what we described as being hot spots and blind spots. If you stood in where we identified as a hot spot, you could stand there, you could actually see members' faces and they could see you. And while you weren't in direct face-to-face contact, you were more at a 45-degree angle from them. You were able to make eye contact and also notice when they were working hard, when they weren't working hard enough, when they were confused. You could notice facial expressions. Blind spots were often where we noticed staff were standing where members couldn't see them. It was almost their little hideaways. They'd go and stand in these little blind spots, almost to get away from the members. Now, we thought that was a bad thing to start with, and in some ways it is, but we also use the blind spots for other things. So where you take this idea of a retail environment and you map how people are using it, you can then start to map your gym in the same way, or your facilities in the same way. And then it can tell you where you need to position staff, position, if it's the most basic format, pop-up stands, or maybe even if you start to use digital signage and some of the more advanced facial recognition signage, you can put those in places where people are actually going to spend time and prompt behaviours. So again, this is the same gym, and what we identified was, and all these red dots just represent places where staff could stand and see a lot of what was going on. Now, this was a cardio theatre space, for those of you who have cardio theatre or remember cardio theatre. So you've got rows and rows of CV equipment. And rather than have a member of staff standing directly under the TVs, face to face, more confrontational, we just identified just off to one side, front on both sides, as a place where staff could position themselves, turn and face customers, and if customers needed support, could then engage and walk towards them. Now, those of you who've perhaps spent any time in fine dining restaurants, and I'm lucky enough to go to some occasionally, what you'll notice is when there's all these white tablecloths and 5 forks and 5 spoons and 5 knives, there'll always be the people that come and wait on your table, but usually there's 2 or 3 people who are just hanging around in the room, and they're stand back, often close to the wall, once your table's been served. So if there's an issue, they come over and intervene. So they're keeping an eye of what's going on, they're not the waiter, but they're the person that comes in if you drop a fork and says, "Don't worry, sir, I'll replace that." And we use that idea as well from retail, that, you know, put people where the customers are and where they're going to see the staff. You don't want to hide the staff away. Now, what we're seeing, so we did this with people, we also did it with pop-up signs to nudge and prompt people in different directions, but some of them, the more advanced systems that are now available, you know, if you've got here on the left-hand side, you've got a 35-year-old male looking at a signage board. Some of the smart boards now will actually recognize that that's a man's face and then put adverts on that screen that are designed to be attractive to men. I'm sure there are plenty of women that would like to look at Brad Pitt as well, but the idea is that rather than just having a static sign, you have signs that change. There's a number of reasons for this. Those of you who've got anything in your club that's fixed on the wall, it's quite common here in the UK. We have, you know, big posters that go up on the wall that don't change for 6 years, or a list of what people have achieved. When they're static, the first time they go up, people notice them. After 2 or 3 visits, they don't notice them at all. So actually signage that changes and moves, very, very powerful for prompting behaviours, reinforcing, again, messages. And that same sign, if a 32-year-old female walks past, might produce a completely different advert. Now, we could take that technology and relate it to people's training. We could give them examples of different ways of training. With these advanced ones where they're not just recognizing or going beyond just the age and gender, and actually recognize the person, it could actually prompt types of workout that that person might be interested in. I've even been talking to someone about us when we're videoing it within clubs, actually capturing video of customers and then playing it back to them, almost like their montage of their workout for the day. Now, a good place to put this signage is actually in the blind spots where the staff would normally go and stand. Because interestingly enough, when you do, the staff don't go and stand next to these signs, they actually avoid them. So it actually forces them into the hot spots. But these digital signs can be very, very effective in communicating with your customers, providing them with information and prompting new behaviours. Now, this might seem a little bit way out there, but there's a technology called LiDAR, and LiDAR is used to track weather patterns. Konica Minolta are currently using LiDAR inside buildings to actually track people's behaviour within shopping environments, shopping malls, big stores, and they're looking at where they're going. And not only, and this is perhaps this image doesn't do it full justice, but they're able to actually recognise and do facial recognition at the same time. So what you're likely to see is actually, if they've got an image, if they know who you are, and in our clubs we're likely to be able to do this because we can take photographs of our members when they join. The latest systems can not only say who this person is and present the additional information about their age, their gender, their ID and so on, but it can actually recognise their facial expressions. Now, I don't see it as being too far off that we start being able to track facial expressions in the gym environment as a recognition of whether someone's frustrated, confused, happy, exhausted, and feed that information back to us. Because if someone's looking confused, then a member of staff needs to intervene and help them become unconfused, if that's a word. But this is being used a lot more effectively. We could also take this technology and start then communicating back. If we know the person's been in the club, we know they've worked out, we know they enjoyed their workout, we could actually post on their Facebook page for them, or we could post and send them information about their workouts. So this, while it might seem quite far-fetched, this LiDAR technology, and there are a few other versions of it, it's actually being used in malls at the moment. So you're looking to see if you can make people happy, if you can surprise them, offer delight, and then track their behaviours beyond just knowing they visited the club today. So there's also, you know, point five, there's some technology innovations. I can't even say it. Technology innovations that we might want to think about. Now, wearables have obviously been around, and some of our customers use wearables and some of them don't, and that's entirely up to them. I think the way to think about a wearable is, when I think about it from retention, is that if you go to a store and you buy something and you get a receipt, often a paper receipt, it itemizes what you purchased. Now, the big retail stores collect all that data against your loyalty card so they can see what your regular purchase patterns are like. Now, we could use technology, wearable technology, in the same way, in that we could track and use the information about the member to help the member make decisions about exercise. Because I think the area where this technology is not as strong as it could be yet is actually prompting people what to do next. So, you know, I often joke that, you know, someone looks at their Fitbit or their band and they go, oh, my heart rate. Oh, look, my heart rate's 4,718. Is that good or bad? So the technology often gives them numbers, but it doesn't tell them or doesn't suggest to them what to do. And that's where I think we can step in and help people with their technology. Because for me, I think of this as just being the shopping list. The band is telling me what they're doing. Now, I think some of our PTs need to really be wary of the quality of the service they give. Some of them are absolutely exceptional. Some of them just count. They just stand next to people and count. And they're not great at writing exercise programs either. And I think some of the PTing of the future will certainly be done using artificial intelligence. We've already seen a few systems being released. And this artificial intelligence is going to help us or help customers get the most effective programming. And when you think already that 1/3 of the world's stock market trades are actually made by computers, it doesn't really, for me, it's not much of a stretch to think that at some point computers are going to be writing people's exercise programs, recognizing what they did today, working out whether they need to recover and rest for longer, and then suggesting the next program. And some of them are going to be better at doing that than some of the personal trainers that are currently out there. So some PTs beware. Now, if we're thinking about how we're using this in terms of promoting visits, interactions, and programming, obviously the wearable tech's going to help us in terms of recognizing when they've actually worked out, either within the club or outside the club. The types of LiDAR and what spaces people are using within the club will help us to understand where we can interact, either face-to-face or digitally. And obviously the information drawn out of either the equipment or out of the wearables will really help with programming and program updates. Because if we're not updating people's programs, they're going to fall off fairly quickly. Now, you will get two categories of customer: one who likes to do the same all the time, and some that like to do different, and there'll be a group in the middle. The ones who like to do the same, don't push them to do something different. They just like running on the treadmill. Just leave them to get on with it and just feed back and welcome them into the club. The ones who want programming updates and changes, the information that we're getting now from this wearable tech and from their usage of around the club, you know, we could be prompting them into other areas of the club. Have you tried this? Now, I think a simple way of doing this and a low-cost way of doing this, and I know some operators are already using these, is to use iBeacons. iBeacons are small devices that usually fit onto a wall or a pillar, sometimes a ceiling, and they emit a signal. And they're fairly basic in their format, but basically as you pass by them, they send a message to your mobile device that tells you something. So in a shop, what would happen is, you know, you walk in, you walk past the door, and a message is sent to your phone. It pops up and says there's 50% off these shoes. And because they've already got your details, it says, welcome Anne, enjoy today's special offer. And they're going to prompt Anne in particular ways. Now, we could be prompting people with, you know, the type of workout they're doing. Have you tried? And I'll summarize that in a second. But these beacons are being used all over the place. This is an example of one that's used in a museum. I know a couple of years ago when I was in LA for the URSA conference, I was walking past a store, and actually it sent me a message outside the store saying, well, you've just walked past our store, here's the things you've missed out on today. And it completely threw me, but it did make me curious to go back. Now, iBeacons aren't expensive, so we could be deploying iBeacons fairly low cost in our businesses. We just don't want to deploy too many of them, and we need to think really carefully about the types of messages we're sending out. Because if we wanted to try and increase someone using the cross-trainer zone, then we could have an iBeacon here with a 5 meter range that anyone who went into this range got a message saying, when you finish this, why don't you try this? Whereas some of them can be dialed up so they'd cover the whole zone. I've seen a client recently that when their members turn up and they walk into the club, it reminds them if they've got a class booked and what time that class is, just as a prompt. And it talks to them by name. So again, going back to the strategies, it's difficult to use iBeacons for prompting visits, except if we did it on the way out, which might be a bit confusing if we're also trying to prompt them on the way in, but we could make a decision on that. Certainly provides us an opportunity to interact digitally. And I think from a programming perspective, we could be prompting workout of the day, workout of the week, and things like try this. Go and try this type of workout and see how it is for you. So we can get people using equipment perhaps that they haven't used before, so that we're not wasting money on equipment that we really like but no one ever seems to use, and they don't use it because they don't know how to use it. That could be a simple video message going, this is how you use this piece of equipment. Now, RFID, I think Disney have really captured this with the Magic Band. They spent over $1 billion developing this system, and I think it took them about 5 years. But they certainly have taken it to another level. But the thing you need to do with any of this technology is teach people how to use it. So here, touch the Magic Band for your fast pass. It's showing you and telling you what to do. In the early stages with new technology, you have to teach people what to do. You can't just always expect them to understand what they're supposed to do. But, here's a range of them presented. Someone turns up because they booked their holiday, and here's the 5 Magic Bands with the people's names, pre-programmed, pre-configured, to in order them to use the Magic Band as a room key, which could be our access control, photo pass. This could be, could have photographs of you working out, I don't know. But admissions, forms of payment, you can use it in their restaurants. So in Disney, if you use a ride that takes a photograph, it'll upload that to a special part of the website, so that when you access it, you don't have to walk around and wait for your photographs. You get all your photographs. Now, Disney have used this to track customer usage within the park, and they're putting on, when the lines become 2 hours, 3 hours long, they're putting on more entertainment for those people in the lines, or they're putting on another parade to draw people away from the lines, so it doesn't feel so uncomfortable and so burdensome to just get to the park and have to wait. They've stepped this up, so I think this is the version 2. So they've certainly found it to be successful, but it allows them to understand how people are using their parks. It allows them to understand where to position their rides, where to position their food outlets, how to change things to actually improve the experience for the customer, but also drive increased revenues. So that can be used for visit frequency, but it's actually really good. The RFID is good for knowing when someone entered, but also when they left. A lot of the times we don't know, we know when people entered, but we don't know when they've gone. It's also really good for dwell time, working out where people spend their time. How long do they spend in the locker rooms? How long do they spend at the bar? Do they spend an hour in the club but only 15 minutes actually working out? Can also be used in terms of programming for planning workouts. for people, but also to avoid congestion. So you might be saying, okay, we need to put on some more group X or some small group training, because actually the facility is getting really, really busy, and we need to reduce the friction that the members are experiencing and give them another way of working out tonight. Now, as I said right at the beginning, there's a slight mistake on this slide, but that's my fault, not anybody else's. I've called these companies, but actually these aren't all companies. Some of these are just areas to look at. I'd certainly go and look at Minolta Konica and what they're doing, and Disney's Magic Band, but also look at, go and do a search in mapping member behaviour or mapping customer behaviour. There's a whole range of videos on YouTube that will help you understand how retail are using technology to drive business. There's one of those, I can't remember which one it is by looking at those, but there's one of those that's fascinating that shows the comparison between how much money is spent online compared to how much money is spent in stores. And actually online, although online continues to grow, it's insignificant compared to the amount people still spend in stores. And how they're merging these two things together. They're saying, there won't be an online, offline. There'll just be a buying experience over the next few years. Some other things to go and have a look at. I'm sure we can make these available to you to follow up on. I'd certainly go and look at Jealous Robot Toaster, just for the fun of it. But we're going to see increases in robotics. We're already seeing people like Amazon using robotics in their warehousing. We could be looking at robotics in terms of tidying up the free weights area. There's all sorts of things. Some of it's perhaps a bit far-fetched, but some of it very, very consumer-driven technology that's going to be made available to everybody. So that's my take on it for this part of the session. I might have just rambled past any questions. I've not seen any questions. I've not stopped, but I'm happy to do questions now if anybody's got any questions that they want to ask me, or just my thoughts, or even share their thoughts.
Awesome. Hey, thanks, Paul. And attendees, this is your chance to pose your questions to Paul if you can use the question interface inside of the control panel. I'll kind of kick things off here, and I'm curious, what metrics do GMs need to monitor in their club membership reports?
One of the ones I think we should use that's used a lot by apps is monthly active users. We want to be knowing of all of the members, how many of the members are using the club this month. And then we want to break that down by how many have used it just once, how many have used it 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, probably up to a maximum of about 8. Because you really want to be able to tell whether, your club's being used by the wider range of your members, not just that hardcore. And I think, our industry is slightly different than a lot of industries in that people pay for their membership and the club gets their money whether the consumer uses the product or not. Now, that wouldn't be the same in a retail store, and it certainly wouldn't be the same in a restaurant, theatre, places like that. You pay and you either consume on the spot or you consume at home or elsewhere, but you do end up consuming. Fitness and health clubs, you can buy and not consume. And the market's going to be really challenged, or some operators are going to be really challenged if they cannot get people to come and use their clubs, because eventually they'll just dwindle away and go and choose alternative activities. So I'd certainly go with monthly active users. In this environment, I'd also want to know simplistically how long they spend in the club, and do we need to try and increase that, or do we need to try and decrease it so that the flow through the club creates less friction.
Which actually transitions nicely to a question from Taff, who asks, what's the easiest way to measure dwell time in an area? Is there a mobile app like NetPulse that can do this for us?
I don't know if the NetPulse app does it, and if it does, I apologise. I just don't know if it does it. We've always just done dwell time by visually monitoring, and now the systems with the cameras, there's coding in those systems that notice when people stop moving, how long they stop for. It's a bit like on the wearables. I use one of the Under Armour wearables. When I'm out on my bike, it knows when I've stopped riding, and it gives me the time that I was out riding and the time I was actually riding. So the dwell time, which is me usually talking, is the difference between the two. I'd certainly look at the net pulse one. I'm not familiar with net pulse, as none of my clients have got net pulse, so it's not something I'm looking at every day.
Gotcha. And let me circle back to our metrics question. And Anthony has a really interesting question for you. And he asks, what metrics are different between boutique clubs versus the traditional membership fitness centers?
Boutique clubs tend to, because they sell almost at point of workout, so you can't measure. I did a big presentation on boutiques, which people can get access to, that I did at Ursula, boutiques, big box and budgets. And one of my friends who's a boutique operator said, "Oh, Paul, we've never ever had a member quit our boutique." And I paused for a minute, and then I just went, "That's because you don't sell memberships." And he went, "Yeah, exactly." So the boutique metrics are usually based on occupancy rather than total membership. So say like someone like SoulCycle might know they've got 45 bikes, and they'll be measuring the occupancy of each class as opposed to how many people are members. And they'll be looking to maximize occupancy. That's the way in which they drive revenue. They'll also look at revenue per square foot, because they're usually much, much smaller in space. So you can't measure, it's difficult to measure length of membership if you don't sell a membership. And if you're doing pay as you go, all you can do is measure the time from when the person first used it until the last time they used it as an indicator. But what you can't do is then predict whether they would continue using it outside of their last visit. So it gets a little bit complex because you can't use all the same metrics, but certainly the occupancy is the biggest one.
Let me shift gears. I'm curious, Paul, do we sell monthly memberships or do we sell yearly memberships?
Okay, I'll tell you what the data says. If I were to open a club today, I would have the option of both. We know that people who sign up month by month by month, so they pay monthly, but there's no commitment, quit much, much more quickly than people who sign up to a 12-month agreement, even if you don't enforce it. So if I've got a club and I say I've got a 12-month agreement, which basically says you're going to spend $600 being a member, but we're going to want $50 a month from you. Even if I don't enforce that, so if 7 months in they say I want out, those members always stay longer than members who are on a non-commitment month by month by month. So what would I do? If it was my club, non-commitment, it'd be $800 a year. 12-month commitment, it'd be $600 a year. I'm certainly going to want to know, though, how long my members stay for. I'm going to offer both. I wouldn't bother at all with 3-month memberships, 1 month, 2 months, or any other time period. I'd just go 1 and 12, and depending on where you are in the world, you might be able to still do 18 and 24 months. That's not possible globally in all countries. So I'd certainly do it that way.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. Hey, another question from Anthony, and I like this from the standpoint of thinking about how to prioritize programming. And the question is, from a programming standpoint, which programs in order of priority are the best for retention? Group versus personal training, self-training, small group training. What do you think?
I have to be careful here because I can't infringe on some work I've done for some clients. So I'm going to have to be quite vague, but hopefully it'll give Anthony will give you the answer you want. I would rank from the top: small group training, Group X, packaged regular personal training, and then independent, just turning up when you want.
I think we'll take it at that. Certainly, being a cyclist, indoor cycling probably would come number one for me, but I think I'm a little biased.
Yeah, and I think also what you have to think of is that, okay, I'm going to say here, look, the highest is small group training. When I go out and ride my mountain bike, there's a group of friends I ride with. If someone says to me, I'll come for a ride with you, I'm like, no, you won't. Because I want to train with those guys and ride with those guys. And very rarely do we invite anyone to ride with us because it's our little group. When I go to the gym, I do, group X classes, mainly spinning classes. But if I'm in the gym, I want to train on my own. I want to be around people, but I don't necessarily want to train with other people. You can't force people to do activities they don't want to do. It'd be like asking me to go running. My running days are over. My knees won't take it anymore. If you said, we really think you should join this running club, it's not going to happen. But we do know small group has an impact. We know group X has an impact. But actually the thing that drives all of those is actually routine and time. That someone comes at a certain day at a certain time. Once they've fitted that into their lifestyle, they're more likely to retain their membership than if they train on an ad hoc basis. So we know that in terms of personal training, people who buy one-off PT sessions or come on an irregular basis actually quit faster than people who don't have personal training. So that's why I'm saying packaged personal training, set day, set time, that would be the way to do your personal training.
And Anthony, just to interject as well too, I mean, based on what Adam Zaitsev, who's the CIO of Gold Gym International, their focus has really been on indoor cycling, and that seems to be kind of their priority. If that helps you at all.
Yeah,
Paul, I gotta come back to this notion of visiting should be the #1 activity a club should support.
Yeah.
And I'm curious from the standpoint of how should clubs be using technology to talk to members who aren't visiting?
Well, first of all, they need to track when people are visiting so they know the gap between their last visit or when they last visited. Then they can be using all sorts, if you've got Facebook, you've got Twitter, emails, SMS, all of those technologies are really, really powerful in following up with people. And in fact, some of the stuff we've done, members prefer it when actually they get a digital communication about them not visiting as opposed to a real person calling them. So that low visit call that some clubs make where they ring up and go, you haven't been in for a few weeks. Actually, it's a disaster because they make the person feel uncomfortable, and all the person ends up doing is justifying why they didn't come in, which actually reinforces the behaviour. So if you're going to do any calls, and I have no issue with doing calls, don't talk about why they haven't been in, just talk about what they're experiencing, what do they like when they come to the club, and then ask them the question when they're going to be in next, and try and prompt that next visit to the club. We've used video communication, and we're constantly trying different types of video messaging with people. We're sending SMSs, we're doing combinations of the thing as well. Any of those things will work, but the thing to do is test, and test small but frequently. So send 10 emails and see if anyone opens them. Send 10 SMSs, see if anyone responds. But do it frequently and keep changing it up to see if you can get it. Any of those things will work, Todd. You've just got to be thinking about how do I make it more comfortable for someone to come in than to stay at home.
Awesome. Hey, really excited to have you again, Paul. I mean, I have so many notes here, and just to our attendees, we will be sharing the recording probably later this afternoon, first thing in the morning. Certainly, I'll share Paul's contact information so you can follow up with him as well. Let me close by thanking our sponsor, Club Industry, for making these webinars possible. And finally, I hope that you can spend some time and join us in Washington, D.C. on the 11th through the 13th of September for the 4th Annual Motionsoft Technology Summit, where we'll cover issues like retention and best practices throughout the summit. So join us at motionsofttechnologysummit.com. Paul, thank you again. Everybody have a great day.
Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.